Today, just a quick example of a company who has not integrated system and what that means, or what impact this will have on certain processes like invoicing, crediting, sending out product equipment, etc. So situation is, it's a company called DDS. As always in each company, marketing and sales is the focal point for any activities. And here we have the situation with no integrated systems, and I can tell you we have this case quite very often with companies who have a non-integrated system. So, but what does it mean? Aim is to describe which processes are better and how a CRM, for instance, can help. So it's a fictitious company. They are producing LAN equipment, routing and switching, have not, as I said, an integrated system. And however, make sales and marketing is the existing strategy for selling stuff. So, as been said, no tool, no program application is integrated. So what does it mean? Let's imagine there's a different type of routers and they have two divisions, which is wholesale and which is direct sales. And you see, if you have two groups or two sectors, it's a different business if you do a wholesale or if you do direct sale. And what are the problems? Without going into detail, first of all, and this happens even with a well-integrated system, is an incorrect pricing. What does it mean? It can mean discounts wrong applied. So buying price not clear. If you don't have it in an ERP system, it can happen that the price will rise and that you don't have the latest buying price, because as been said in one of our last sessions, if you have an ERP system which is e-bonded with the suppliers and manufacturers who sell you the equipment which you then resell or sell as a wholesaler, then they poll you twice the day and provides you new lists and new price lists, global price lists, European price lists. And if they grant you a certain discount, which is mainly done by a so-called deal ID, it's a specific discount, and they update the price list, then you still have the right percentage which they grant you. For instance, for Cisco, if they grant you 50% or 60%, then you have the buying price. But if you don't have the latest price list from them, it could be wrong, and then you have an issue. So other stuff for incorrect pricing could be if you calculate that wrong. This can happen if you do it manually. And as said, normally when we send out quotes here in our company, we have a 4 eyes principle. So excessive calls to the customer for information. So you need certain information from the client before you can produce a sales order, which is quantity, location, where to deliver, contact person, VAT number. What we have seen when we had our workshop last week. So lots of points to consider. And often client calls you and says, I need switches, 5 from this, 5 from this, or they send you an email, please make a quote, but you can't produce a quote with all this information here. Quantity type, location, where to send, contact person, VAT number, and company code and name, as well as services. You know, if you buy hardware, you always need to add a service. Otherwise, you don't have guarantee, liability, warranty, etc. Also, you need to know which software client wants. Sometimes they only tell you the hardware, not mentioning the software. And if you only have the hardware part, lacking the additional software, which has many possibilities which you can select and choose, then you can't produce a quote because the subscriptions or the software service have a certain price tag. And if you don't know which software the client wants, you can't produce a quote. So what happens? You have to call back and forth, or you have to send emails. So this is a problem, an issue, which lead then to delays in processing the orders often, because first of all, it's difficult to get a quote out. And often it happens then, as they have a certain validity, that they send you the order too late, and you have to ask again for the suppliers and manufacturers who are providing the hardware or software, that they change their price, so you can only have a validity normally of 6 weeks. And if they do it after the 6 weeks or 4 weeks sometimes, then the quote is not valid anymore. Missed delivery dates. Now that we have scarce resources, we have delivery dates of almost 1 year. But if you wouldn't have that, normally the client needs to tell you the delivery date. So normally they said we want a delivery in 5 weeks at this and this day, which you then have to put in a system. And if you don't have that, you have to do it manually. But then the problem is you have to write it down somewhere, and no one is really checking, and you have this information maybe only on a piece of paper, which leads then to problems within the process. So what is the reason? Separate information systems throughout the company in certain functional areas, which is the sales order system. You can buy software for sales order systems without having an ERP system. The problem is then it can only produce sales and orders. Same for warehousing and same for accounting. Accounting is where you produce invoices. Warehouse is inventory, logistic. And sales order system is certain quoting tool. And there are still many outside that are not integrated in such a system. Which means you have a number of transactions which you need to handle manually. Because if the sales order system is not linked to warehousing and to accounting, you need to do somehow manually, or you need to store the information somewhere. And sometimes companies, especially smaller companies, as I said, do it on paper basis. So if you do that, then the first thing that will be an issue is it's not in real time, which is again, as has been said, an issue. Because if you would have an ERP system, it would be in real time. So how does this process look like? You see that here, all these systems, this So price, quoting, sales, warehouse, invoicing, payment, receiving. This is a circle, right? But there's no coordination in between. These are certain systems that are not connected to each other. So, and how can this work if you don't have that? I know companies, they're just doing a simple telephone call or a visit to a person, then they have kind of a calendar something or notice letter, and they write it down manually, or they simply do that in a sales call, and then they do a handwritten quotation and generates copies. Often they don't have it even handwritten. They have maybe a certain software or tool where they can do, but this tool is a software island, so it has no connection to any other system. But it's still companies that do that. So, and then they just print it out, send an original sheet to the client, make a copy and made it to the send it to the sales office or send an email, and they then keep a copy for their records, and then they have lots of files in a certain office, right, where they just manually printing it out and store it somewhere. So this is the situation. So now the customer sends an order. You have to again go to your files, check, okay, which client was it, what was the order, was it right, and then they have to bring that somehow into the next system with a special order number, which is often 800, so that the quotation then fits to the later order, which the customer then can call off. And here the problems occur because the rest of the ordering process, which you see here, which is about delivery date, checking customers' credit status, entering custom information into a current order or entry system, is not existing, which means for the first point, if you don't have the delivery dates, it will fail because often the equipment that they order will be somehow implemented or utilized in a certain data center or in an IT room. And normally, especially in data centers, you don't have access, or you have to register access, and you have to do that prior to delivery, which is not an easy thing. Also, and if you don't have that, you need to do it manually, which then requires phone calls. Also checking customer credit status. So in an ERP system, you have then tools where you can do credit checks automatically with the known companies, service companies who can provide you a status of creditability of certain clients and companies. But in this case, you wouldn't have that, so you would do that manually. Also, you need to bring the order in a system, and if you don't have that, you have to do it manually. You need that in a system because if then there comes a request or ask or something is missing, or imagine the equipment arrives and it's defect, what will you do then? We call that on arrival, DOA. Then you don't have the information in your system, and there's someone then outside who gets the package or the hardware, needs to check it, and it's dead on arrival. So what does this guy then do? What is the action? There's no system, no process that can be actioned to, for instance, ask for a new one. And for instance, for dead on arrival, you have only a time window of 1 day. So this means, but if you don't have that in your entry system where you could do that with ERP automatically, then you have the issue. So also, if you then send it to a client side, let's imagine you have done the quote, you have placed an order, you have received equipment for a certain client, which you want to send out. Then you need to label that, and you need to produce a packing list. And you have to print that manually if you don't have a proper system. And you have to carry that to the warehouse, and you have to sort that somehow, small orders, large orders, orders where you have a certain timeline and some other variables which you need to consider. But here you would again to do this manually, and you often need to sort and to check small with large packing stuff, and you have to separate that because it requires different actions. But here in this case, in this example, they used a program inventory level at the warehouse, which is again kind of a software island where you can put that in. But also this system is not integrated. So here comes the problem which we discussed, bullwhipping effect and peaks of orders, and then you have times where you receive only few orders, but then you have time where you receive or have a big order backlog, and then the problems arise. And if you then have a low inventory level because you don't have the experience and you don't have the statistics and the looking back into the past years of the order volume, that's what we discussed when you produce just in time, or when you have when you try to bring your inventory level down, then you have a problem. And if they change rapidly during the day, it can be both. It can be worse for both situations, because high inventory means cash problems, cash flow, because money is bound. So also, if you have it not properly organized, for instance, in our warehouse, it's done automatically from robots. You have to pick up, discover, and see if it's the desired type to fill the order. You have to check, is it enough or not? Often then it's not enough because you don't have the experience and you don't have a system that manages that for you to have always the right order level in your warehouse. So to check what to do in such a situation, order picker might then have discussions with the leader in the warehouse, which is the supervisor, and sales clerks and others, and then the telephone conferences, and then the discussion starts, and you have to check what can be done, where can we get material, can we work with distribution, who can help us in such a situation. So what about accounting and invoicing? Invoicing has been just seen as problematic because it is a manual process, or it is a software island where you don't have connections to other systems. There's no e-bonding. You don't know, is the amount right? Was it that what you had on your quote? So problems arise. So the sales guys send sales order data for the invoices, but that's still been manually and often lacking certain information. The process disrupts. However, if they have now the information and they put it manually into an accounting system as a standalone system, they can load the data. The problem is then it's not verified. And if this has been done by one person, there's no 4I principle. So problems and failures may arise. And if they arise, they often have to do manual adjustments. They have to check again. They have to look on the manual lists. So it requires a lot of time. And if they have, or they see faults or mistakes, you certainly have to change that, right? And do corrections, which then again delays the whole process. Maybe they find out the software that's been sold cannot be applied to a certain type of router because it simply does not fit, or they see the cabling is missing. What often happens is you order technical equipment, especially in the network area, for instance, routers or switches, and you order them, and it often happens if you don't have an integrated system which reminds you that something is missing, because they do a logic check, and if you don't have that, often the cable is missing. So and that happens even with an ERP system sometimes. And then the worst thing is they have everything there, but not enough cables. And this means then they cannot start work. Everything gets delayed. And if that happens, they turn around and they don't pay the invoice. So you have a cash problem. So the problems then aggravates and results in late or inaccurate invoices. And if they are late, if they are inaccurate, clients won't pay. And then you have cash problem. For this, certain teams then are in charge, which is called cash collection. Usually they are, in our company, they are outsourced to Romania, and these are guys who are just checking, have the invoices been paid accurately, have the dates passed or not. If, then they inform the sales team, for instance. So also problems that could then occur with payment and returns is for processing payments. And if there's any small problem issue in the whole sales process, and they receive a correct invoice, then many clients, let's say, do not return a copy of the invoice with their payment, and then it will also lead to cash issue because you wouldn't receive the money. But that's not the only issue. Also, return processing is flawed. So I don't know whom of you have heard of RMA number. When you buy certain equipment and it comes to a warranty issue, or you have a service case, the first thing that you need to do is you have to open an RMA case with your vendor for service. For you, you have to find the vendor, or the vendor provides you then an RMA possibility. You have to open an RMA case with the vendor or with the manufacturer. You get a certain number, and then they make sure that you get, for instance, a next day delivery, where you then get, or where they then return your defective material. So this means they send out their logistic, which come to you with a package with, let's say, a new switch. Then they say, okay, give me the old one, here's a new one. And then you can change it, and the RMA process is growth. The problem is, if you don't have integrated an e-bonded system for the accounting department, it's then difficult to credit back the appropriate account, and also to follow the process, to see a certain status. So you would have to do it manually. And if you have a poor penmanship of the return material, it can also provide problems because what they check in an RMA process, the manufacturers and the vendors, is the right information on the RMA process or in the RMA document, which they take from you. Maybe you know that if you order something also in private, let's say with Amazon, and you return something, it's kind of similar to an RMA process. So this means you see then a certain number, you have to write down what the problem is, and you ask for a new product or for replacement spare part, and then you bring it, let's say, to logistics, and a few days later you receive a new one. In the business-to-business area, this often takes only 1 day, whereas if you do it in private, it can take a few days up to a few weeks. However, if you do that, you have to credit the client, and if you don't do that, you run into the next issue. So because they then require new material or they want to have credit back, and you can do the same if you're as a private person and you send something back which is defective. You could, if you do it with Amazon, you could either say, okay, I want my money back, or I want spare part or new hardware, new notebook, for instance. So this is example where then ERP systems can minimize. So this is what they are for, to minimize data entry errors, to have the accurate information to each stakeholder, and not just next day or any time. It's real time. So it doesn't matter which information you put into the system. At the same moment, your manufacturer, your vendor, your partner, your client, your accounting team, your sales team, everyone has the same information and sees the same status of certain order, of a certain quote, of a certain delivery, of a certain project. So it can be checked same time. So any information will be available on each for each user who is connected to the ERP system. And this is what makes the difference and what it makes then easier. So you can track the transactions. See here, such as invoices, packing list, the RMA number, and even with the RMA number, you have then a direct connection to the manufacturer. To have then the right process in place, the manufacturer is involved. They send you they return you the new equipment. They take over the old equipment, and you see the status from the manufacturer in the system. So you can see what is the action. So you have placed a case. They give you a certain number, an RMA number, and then they say, okay, under this number you see the status, and then you can review and observe what's happening. And then either you get payments or anything else, but it's integrated then in one system. So, but the sales order as a process has a certain events that needs to be covered by a certain ERP, respectively CRM system, which is pre-sales activities. What are pre-sales activities? These are calls with a client, advisory, producing a kit list, and the actual requirement for a certain order. So all the information you need. If it then comes to a quote and to an order, then the process starts. Then you have you can check, is it inventory sourcing that you do? Is it from a vendor or manufacturer? How will the delivery be organized? Will it be fast delivery? And you have to schedule the date which you will get from the client. Then the billing will needs to be organized, because often you then have a passus which says after delivery you get the invoice paid. So usually is 30 to 60 days payment, which is necessary for you because otherwise you would have a cash problem. So sorry. And then the payment from the client. And here it is important to see when the cash arrives on your account. So with the ERP, you can see payments that's been done on your account. You see when it was transferred, how much it is, in which currency, and so you can follow the information process. And if you then have a team, a cash collection team, their only task is then to review and monitor which money went out and came in. And if they see deviation or they see unpaid invoice, they can then start proper action. So also they can easily get pricing information about products and the marketing activities. You see that here, tracking, customer contacts, sales calls, visit, and mailings can be organized. And this part here, this is CRM, which is one part, as we all know, from ERP, so customer relationship management. So it's good if you have now the ERP system, but then you need a certain modules to organize this full process. Remember, we had this in one of our sessions, CRM tools. And with such CRM tools, you can then see when, for instance, a client calls you on a certain number, a system pops up automatically the information from the client. You can see which order had the client placed, which delivery dates, was there an issue with invoices, what was the history, how often did the sales call the client, and what was the result of the discussions. So every of this information you can get out of the system, and you can then follow and put in new information, which in turn then everyone can see real time in the system. So you can also then create data about customers and generate advertising, generate mailing lists, and you can check which characteristics have certain clients. So you could check, for instance, how many clients are interested in notebooks from Dell, or you could check what did the client bought in the past 2 or 3 years, which products which were interesting, which one was quoted but not ordered, which one were quoted and ordered, and then you can draw conclusions, and you can then organize sales campaigns, which are important, and you can organize such campaigns in your CRM tool. And then if you then have the proper information out of your ERP, the client will recognize that you have a clue of what they demand and what their wishes are, as you have certain information collected from the client, which you then can use for your own purpose to find out, yeah, the wishes or the challenge the client has and which products would be best for him or which services. And you see that often if you receive calls or you call a certain company and as a private person and you want something, right, and you call them with your cell phone number, some companies then call you with your name, although you never have spoken to them, and this is because they have a good CRM tool which stores the information. So for instance, I see that with the insurance company where I am, so if I give them a call and they have my number in their system and also in their CRM system, windows popping up for them, and so if they see me, they then can say, oh, Mr. Kahlert, nice that you call us. Do you have certain wishes? And they see then all the information about me in such a call. And this makes the difference. This is what customer expect. Nowadays, I would say we have even too much information, right? I was thinking or walking around with a friend of mine, and we spoke about pools in the garden. And if you see that then and you read news in the internet, and suddenly you see advertising about pool and stuff, and sometimes, it's a bit strange and makes me afraid, which information they already have and how they can get such information. And you know how it is. You have probably also Amazon and cell phones, which somehow collect information. And if you see how much information they have, or for certain sites you have to visit, you recognize then if you are on other pages in the internet, you see a dedicated advertising campaign, which is adapted to you, which is somehow focusing on the wishes and requirements you just have. So this is what is on the one side a bit strange and worse. On the other side, it helps you to find maybe the right product. The problem is, if you then turn around and buy something, you still get the advertisement, although you have bought it. So you see, the intelligence is there, but not fully. Anyway, what is sales order processing? In a summary, in a nutshell, it's a series of activities must take place to record a sales order. This is what we have just discussed. Can start from quotation or a certain inquiry, which can be generated in a pre-sales step, which means you have a call with a client who does not actually know what to buy or what service they want, and then they ask you and you do some advice and they come to let's say to a conclusion that they need to buy something, and for this then you need to collect information from the client, and this is not only contact name and address, but if you receive a sales order, it's also about things that you can put, for instance, in a CRM system, which are not fixed information, but which is qualitative information about things that the client is interested in. And you have seen in this example, critical steps are you need to record each and everything. You need to determine the selling price, but here you need accurate prices with correct deal IDs and with latest price list. Because if you determine a price, you send it out, you find later out there's something wrong, it's then almost impossible to withdraw and to turn around and say, okay, it was wrong, I have to change it. You can't do that. And then sometimes it can happen. And this is why we, as I said, have a 4 eyes principle, that you then bear the cost or additional cost. If it comes good, you save something, but normally you have to pay then more. Also, you have to record the order quantities to make sure it's the right quantity. The alternative has been said, you have seen all the benefits, is then, for instance, an SAP ERP system, because here it is the most used system for such business. You can check each and everything. It's very well integrated. You can then book certain applications from either SAP or others like Salesforce or something else, or Kahlert, and you can put them in, but you can put each information in such an SAP system. And you can then also apply information on discount, on products, and you can update that. As been said, normally such ERP systems are e-bonded with partners, but also often with clients, so that the whole process is automated and you just need to do clicks. You don't need to produce quotes and to write something down manually. It's simply not necessary. So this is it for today. Next week we move on